Welcome to What's Up Wednesday. My name's Craig Mackay, your host. Thank you for joining us. These are exciting times. Why do I say that? It may sound strange, but when you consider the amount of uncertainty in the world today, will inflation continue to rise? Will interest rates follow? When will the war in the Ukraine come to an end, and at what cost? How do people's wages match inflation? What's going on with housing prices? You see, the thing about uncertainty is that it can actually create opportunity. So now's the time to work with business, to work with your clients, to create a vision for success and bring them into that opportunity. By implementing a vision, you can help achieve that. And today, we're going to give you some methodology towards that end. The entrepreneurial operating system provides a methodology to map vision to task and to track that success or gaps in the implementation plan. Our guest speaker is a certified EOS implementer. He's going to provide us with some insights into this approach. As certified management consultants, we understand the importance of a clear vision and a clear path to implementation and through implementation. I like to call it the journey toward excellence, something like the journey of life. If you have a vision and a plan, then enjoy the journey, and the vision will unfold as it should. We have many members who have enjoyed the journey and have given back to the management consulting profession and the association. It's your time to recognize that person and nominate them for a fellowship. Please visit the CMC Ontario website for more details. If you're an associate member or guest, you can get your accreditations at CMC with the CMC certification weekend in June. Visit the CMC Canada website for more details. How about paying it forward? Take on a pro bono project. This is a great opportunity for CMCs to give back to your community and to gain new experiences working with registered charities. If you're interested, they have clients lined up. Contact pro bono at cmc-ontario.ca. We'll put those links in the chat. What's up next? Well, on June 14th, What's Up Wednesday presenter will be Dale Booth, and he will be discussing how to effectively partner with Indigenous firms with guest host Jennifer Smith. Yes, and thanks, Jennifer, for stepping up in June. I will be away next month on a vacation in Greece following the trails of Aristotle and Zeus. I plan to be back on September 13th with a special keynote speaker, Sam Effa. Sam has represented Canada at 3 Olympic World Championships, 3 World University Games, and 2 Commonwealth Games. Most recently, he placed second in the Amazing Canada race. Sam Effa will be our keynote speaker. He'll be discussing the use of sports in advertising, brand marketing, and business, and building the sports community. So save that date in your calendar, the second Wednesday of the month on September 13th. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. Here in the nation's capital, where I live, we are grateful to the Algonquin peoples. For other parts of Ontario, I would like to recognize and acknowledge the traditional territory of the Nawash and Saugeen nations, as I broadcast today from the Bruce Peninsula. And now for our main attraction. As usual, keep your microphones on mute, enter your questions in the chat. I will collect the questions for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation portion of the show. I first met our guest speaker, Scott Morin, at an Ottawa Executive Association presentation. The EOS methodology immediately hit home as a practical way to implement a vision across a corporation. Scott has 25 years of experience as a sales leader. He is a certified EOS implementer. He's led many sales teams and companies through rapid growth. He's seen a lot of ups and downs. He may have a few stories for us over those years. He started a go-to-market advisory and leadership development practice and is now focused on delivering the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, for a stable of progressive and growth-oriented companies. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Scott Morin to What's Up Wednesday. So what's up, Scott?
Thanks, Craig. Just a little bit on my background. I spent most of my career in high technology startups, if you will. And within that space, there's a lot of change, a lot of mergers, a lot of acquisitions, a lot of smoking holes in the ground as well. So I was charting the history of my career to someone the other day, and it worked out to a total of 6 acquisitions, 1 receivership, and 1 asset sale. So I've kind of seen it all, mostly as a sales leader. But I was also a CEO, and when I got into go-to-market advisory, what I was doing was just basically helping companies, put their message out within the market that they were looking to attract. There was some leadership development work as well, and so I had multiple clients that I was working with, and I was working with one particular client here in Ottawa, and I sat through their executive meeting, their weekly leadership team meeting. And I just thought it was a really, really well-run meeting. It started on time. Everyone was on point. There was the right amount of time doing problem solving. There was the right amount of time discussing, the sort of benign sort of issues that are affecting the company. And at the end of the meeting, I asked the CEO what that was, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, that's a level 10 meeting, and that is part of the entrepreneurial operating system." And he handed me a book. The book was called Traction by Gino Wickman, and I read the book from cover to cover in a couple of nights, and that was what started my EOS journey, if you will. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through EOS. It's going to be rapid fire. There's a lot of information to cover. I'm going to try and carve out some time near the end for Q&A. But let's get cracking on this. So the first thing that I want to share with you is just the idea that organizations that are attracted to EOS, typically there's an element of pain there, right? So they've hit the ceiling. They're either flatlining from a revenue perspective, maybe profits have been flatlining, but there's and by the way, there's any number of ways that an organization can hit the ceiling. You might have executives hitting the ceiling. You might have departments hitting the ceiling. The most important thing for an organization to do or an individual to do when they hit the ceiling is they need to acknowledge that something needs to change, right? And so when that acknowledgement happens, more often than not, that's when either I get a call or someone reads the book, and we get engaged from an EOS perspective. So, just a bit of a backgrounder on that front. Now, when I go into the organization that has expressed interest in the entrepreneurial operating system, there's really 3 questions that I ask, and depending on not only the CEO's perspective, but the entire leadership team's perspective, depending on the answers to those 3 questions, if people are being open and honest, we can gauge whether or not EOS is a fit. So those 3 questions are, per Craig's comments at the beginning, how clear is the vision for the organization? So where are you going? How are you going to get there? So how clear is it, not only at the CEO level, but at the senior leadership team level, and then right down throughout the organization, scale of 1 to 10. We'll get the average on that one. The next question is, how accountable are people within your organization for delivering on that vision? Scale of 1 to 10. And then the last question is, how effective are your meetings? Because meetings are things that, lots of people roll their eyes when they hear about meetings. There's lots of meetings that could have been emails. There's way too many meetings, really. But we need to acknowledge the fact that we do need to get together as a leadership team and discuss things, right? Solve problems, gain support. And so if we acknowledge that, are we able to make these meetings more effective? And so scale of 1 to 10. So if I get a bunch of 9s coming back, maybe EOS isn't a fit, right? But generally speaking, that will get some good conversation going with the group. From there, what we'll do is we'll break down the business into 6 key components. So to the extent that you can optimize the 6 key components of a business, it does seem like that ceiling kind of goes away and problems get solved quicker and organizations are able to move forward. So generally speaking, if you were to ask an organization to comment on vision, people, data, issues, process, and their execution methodology, which is traction, and we have something called the organizational checkup that will enable them to do a bit of a deeper dive on each one of these 6 key components. What we will get is usually a 20 to 40 percentile response, amortized across like all the people that take the organizational checkup quiz. And so what we want to do as implementers of the system is to get the organization to 80% plus. 100% is panacea. You'll never get there. Some organizations come close, but our goal is to show market change from your baseline today right through to being a lot more effective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpack each one of these 6 key components. And I know that a lot of this might be very, very familiar to you as management consultants. And dare I say, a lot of this is very basic. EOS is a very simple, practical methodology, but the way things tie together, it's quite effective, really quite effective. So let me start here. So on vision, what we're going to do is we're going to work with the senior leadership team. So not just the CEO, but basically all of the CEO's lieutenants, to ensure that we've got clarity to the answers of 8 questions. And the answers to those 8 questions, we're going to put on something called the Vision Traction Organizer, or the VTO. And the VTO essentially ends up becoming a 2-page business plan. And it's a really, really simple way for an organization to look at their business. And then it's also a really simple way for them to be able to communicate key components of their vision to their people. So the VTO starts out with core values. Core values, as you may be familiar, are things that organizations have within them. These are the descriptors of really, really valuable employees within your organization. Your senior leadership team needs to possess these abilities, and they can't be aspirational. They can't be table stakes. So these core values, 3 to 5, really any more than 5, you can get up to 7. But these core values should attract the right people to your organization, and they should repel the wrong people. And we should be hiring, firing, rewarding, reviewing, recognizing people based on their embodiment of these core values. So that's a quick drive-by on core values. We have a number of exercises we work with organizations on to derive the core values if they've never done the work. If they've done the work, we'll just make sure that the core values that they aspired to in the past are in fact the core values as we see them today. There's a story I like to tell. You may be familiar with it, being in the business that you're in. Enron's core values. 2 of them were honesty and integrity, right? And so we want to make sure that the core values for your organization are things that you live and breathe. The next component is core focus. So this is your Simon Sinek why, if you will. So your mission. So why do you get out of bed in the morning? That's your purpose. That's your cause. That's your passion. And then your niche is what is your superior skill. So we want to marry the 2. We want to make sure that we have a mission that provides a bit of a North Star to the organization, but we also want to make it super clear to people internally and also to people that we're talking to, with regards to what it is that we do, right? So with these 2 things combined become kind of a sweet spot, if you will. So your purpose, your cause, your passion combined with your superior skill, we'll get the answer to that. And not only the answer, but alignment at the leadership team on that. The next question is, what is your 10-year target? So what do you want to be when you grow up, if you will? What's your aspirational goal 10 years from now? Some organizations that are very traditional in nature, we might move that time frame out a little bit. I have some construction companies. I have some actually a sod company that I work with where we move that time frame out. And then I have some tech companies that I work with where we bring that in, because 10 years is a lifetime if you're a tech company, right? So we'll bring that in maybe to 5 years. But 10 years is a good time frame. And so we want to get alignment on maybe a quantitative goal, you know, a revenue target or a profit target, or a qualitative goal. So, you know, we want to be the Orville Redenbacher of the gear industry, you know, 10 years from now. So that's kind of an example of a qualitative target. And again, this is going to be something that sits up there as a North Star. It helps guide people, helps guide decisions, and gets people inspired. And there does need to be an element of, you know, oh gosh, like the sun, the moon, the planets need to line up in order for us to be there, right? But it could happen. Yeah, I could see that, right? And so there's that sort of fine line that you walk. You don't want to be painting a 10-year target that is just completely out there. But, you know, there does need to be elements that line up, but let's make it aspirational. The next question that we answer is marketing strategy. Marketing strategy is just confirming and clarifying what your ideal best fit customer looks like. What's the psychographic, demographic, geographic? Psychographic is the pain that they have, the problem that you solve, if you will. Demographic would be the type of organization that you're looking to deal with, maybe the title of the type of organization that you're looking to prospect. And then geographic is you know, where, obviously. But the key here is, and the picture we like to paint when we're facilitating this is, you know, in the tech example, let's say you just get, you know, 50 million in Series A, right? And so one of the things you told the investors that you were going to do with that 50 million was you're going to go out and hire an enterprise sales force. Well, who do you point that enterprise sales force at? Right? That's a tech example. You know, a really smaller company example might be you've got a co-op student coming in for the summer. They're going to help you on the sales front. Who do they call? Right? So let's get clarity on that. And yeah, you're going to have multiple target markets. You may even have a partner ecosystem, but let's identify that. 3 uniques are the 3 things that you do when they're stacked on top of each other. You know, essentially no one can touch you, right? If those 3 things are important to your client or your prospect, you want to be sort of weaving those 3 things that you bring in to the table, weaving that into every communication, and trying to get the client to acknowledge that that's important to them. And when that happens, price becomes less of an issue, if an issue at all. Proven process is your customer journey. So from point A to point Z. How do you onboard your clients? How do you account manage your clients right through to the day that they leave, if they leave? And so you want to create a very simple customer journey document or graphic that demystifies how to do business with you. And I guarantee you, as a former sales leader, when you do that, it will shorten your sales cycle. There's fewer questions. And then what you're able to do is you're able to, you know, when you've got a client that is midstream, mid-journey with you, you're able to reset them. If they're wanting to jump ahead to step 6 or step 7, say, no, listen, remember, we were talking about our 7-step process, and really we're still at step 3, right? So, and it just helps reset their expectations. And it's really key that you lay this customer journey document down early within the prospecting relationship. And then you have a guarantee. So some organizations bristle at the idea of having a guarantee, but you know, what we would do is we would just ask the question: is there an objection that comes up when you're in front of a prospect that comes up all the time, but to you it's trivial? Like to you, it's something that you manage quite well. There's very little risk that this particular objection you know, would expose your relationship. Well, then why don't you write a guarantee around it, right? And why don't you lay that down when you're having that initial conversation with the client to take that objection off the table? So that's the marketing strategy question. Again, I'm doing a quick flyby on all of these components. From there, we get into our 3-year picture. Now it's getting a little more real. So we're going to identify our revenue target. We're going to identify our profit or EBITDA or however you want to quantify, that particular area within your business. What are the measurables? So I have a company that I work with that's a fabricator. They're a manufacturer of fire trucks, right? So if we've got in 3 years from now, if we want to be a $50 million business, how many fire trucks does that equate to, right? So those are your measurables. And then what does it look like? So there's a really simplified strategy component here, where basically you go through an exercise and identify what needs to be true in order to support this $50 million number, right? And when you go through that exercise and you get alignment on the things that need to be true, then you can do a little bit of a deeper dive on strategy to get these things done. Or maybe they're quite tactical in that you need another yard or you need a new VP of sales. So these are the things that we talk about. And the key value here when I'm working with a leadership team is I'm working with the team. I'm not working with the CEO exclusively. I'm working with the team. There needs to be consensus, alignment, and you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, based on the business that you're in, how many senior leaders within organizations have no idea how profitable the business is. And so what I'm going to do with this system is I'm going to promote transparency. And I want people to really align and get on the same page. Now, you may not share your profit numbers 2 or 3 levels down. That's your prerogative. I always say to CEOs, that's your prerogative. But really, in my opinion, the more you share, the better. Share it all. Just share it all. But that's my opinion. But let's, at the very least, at the senior leadership team, get alignment on the 3-year picture. From there, so this is the first page of the Vision Traction Organizer. So these are all vision components. Now we're going to get into the second page, which is the traction component. So from there, things get more real, more pressing, if you will. So we're going to take everything that we did in the 3-year. We're going to boil it down to our 1 year. And it's funny, again, very basic stuff to you and what you do. But I was in front of a $100 million company a couple of weeks ago. They do drilling. So they're piling and shoring. And the client said to me, Scott, we've grown 20% year over year for the last 10 years, but we've never set a target, right? And, there's a part of me that says, okay, maybe I shouldn't come in here because I don't want to mess this up. That's fantastic. But, you do need to, a lot of organizations that don't set targets, they just need to sit down and they need to set that target for the year, right? So we're doing our 1-year plan, which is, again, revenue, profit, measurables. Goals for the year is a little different. 3-year picture, I talked about what needs to be true. Goals for the year, these are a lot more specific. So like SMART, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. So you're going to have goals in there along the lines of, well, it depends on your business, right? But you might need to close, if there's 3 tier A accounts that you're currently working with right now, you need to close one of them this year, like at least one of them, right? So that's going to be a goal. Another goal example could be employee net promoter score of 80% or above if you've got some turnover issues. Every organization is a little different. So now we're 1 year. Now we're getting into our 90-day picture, which is the rocks component. I'll build this out here for a second. Sorry about that. The rocks component, which is essentially everything that we talked about, is now boiled down to the next 90 days. And we're big believers in setting 90-day goals. And yes, they map nicely with quarters, obviously, but it's really a human nature thing. You do need to call things out that are 60 to 90 days out. Any further than that, you have a tendency to lose focus, right? And get distracted. So let's identify 60 to 90 days out. Let's start with our revenue and profit targets, but then what are our really, really important goals as a company for the next, 60 to 90 days. And then we have a dynamic issues list on this Vision Traction Organizer. And the dynamic issues list is basically all the long-term issues that are tripping you up, that are preventing you from moving forward. And so we're going to make sure that at the very least we capture them. and that we talk about these issues at least on a quarterly basis, maybe even more frequently than that. But these are your long-term issues. And an example of an issue could be, there's a merger and acquisition that you need to make in this space. You're not going to make it in the next 90 days, but let's put that on the issues list. We have a CEO that wants to retire. So let's put that on the issues list. The CEO isn't ready to retire yet, but we need succession. And so on and so forth. So these are all the issues that you're tracking as a leadership team. So that's the Vision Traction Organizer. And I just have a test of the Ontario Alert Ready system. So sorry about that, gang. That is the vision component. And to the extent that you can answer these 8 questions, get alignment, and share these 8 questions with everyone in your organization, that's 100% strong. The next component of EOS is the people component. So, we want to look at our people, and this is a simplified, HR model, right? So there's really only 2 levers. Okay. So right people are people that live and breathe your core values for the most part. No one's perfect, but for the most part, they live and breathe your core values. And so for that, we have something called the People Analyzer tool. And we just go through a real simple exercise once we've identified what our core values are, of initially subjectively assessing our people and determining whether or not they exhibit, let's say, humbly confident, most of the time, which is a plus, some of the time, which is a plus minus, or rarely, which is a minus. And we'll just do that subjectively. And then after that, what we need to do is any areas where some people are exposed, as you can see, you've got some exposure here with John, you got to go speak to that person. You got to manage that person. You got to set expectations. But then over a period of time, if they're not exhibiting these core values, they're just not a good cultural fit for your organization, right? And so that's the People Analyzer tool. Again, I'm giving you a quick flyby on this one. Right seats. So one lever is, do they live and breathe your core values? The second lever is, are they in the right seats? And what that means is basically, can they execute, right? Can they do their jobs? And then we'll break it down a little even further for you and say, here's the 3 criteria we like to look at. Does this particular individual get their job? So they have a God-given innate talent to do their job. Do they want their job? Probably the most important. There's been many a time in my career where I've been a VP of sales and I didn't really want the job. That's why I became a CEO. And then capability to do the job. So that's the experience, the education, that's the time, right? And so that's one way to look at it. And then we've got this thing that we call sorry, don't mean to be too slangy here. We have something called the accountability chart within EOS. And the accountability chart it's not an org chart, but it's a simplified way of looking at your organization. And so I'm just going to give you a quick flyby on this as well. So the idea is every organization out there on the planet, I don't care how big you are, how small you are, generally speaking, there's 3 primary functions. You got marketing and sales, which is the function that attracts people to your organization and consummates the deal with them. You've got the operations function, which is the function that creates the widget, ships the widget, makes sure people are happy with the widget. And then you've got your finance function, which is keeping account on the finances coming in and out of the organization. Now, that's a very simple way of looking at things. When I work with organizations, sometimes they'll have 5 or 6 functions. Any more than 7, you've got a span of control issue. But one organization I work with, for example, in the construction business, they have a business development function. They don't like to call it marketing and sales. So they got BD. Then they have 2 ops boxes. So they've got an ops box for demolition and excavation. Then they've got an ops box for environmental. And then they have HR/finance is the 4th function. So I just work with the leadership team to basically burn down the organization, build it back up with logically what are the primary functions for your organization. And then we can only have one person accountable for each primary function. Otherwise, no one's accountable. So let's go through that exercise. And in between, we will identify the roles and responsibilities for each one of these major functions. And real simple stuff. But I had one company I was working with where we had 3 founders. It was a tech company. And one of the founders was a trainer. And the founder was viewed as senior leadership because, after all, he was a founder. But really, all he did within the organization was training. Long story short, they were about a $7 million business. The training component of their business was maybe $500,000 a year. We determined that training is not a major function within the organization. It falls as a role / responsibility under services. And so when we did that, technically that founder is now no longer on the leadership team, the senior leadership team, right? Because the senior leadership team meetings should just be the major functions within the organization. I was a little concerned at first. I was a little worried there might be some ego issues, right, with this. But the reality is that founder is still in the owner's box. And the founder looked at me and he said, "You mean I don't need to be in these weekly L10s at the senior leadership team level?" I said, "No, actually, you probably shouldn't be. You're chewing up bandwidth." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, thanks. I hate those things." And he's happy just to be the trainer, right? And again, he's in the owner's box still. He'll take his dividend, but he's one level down. So that's the really important thing that needs to occur when we build our structure. Now, the second key component of this is just the concept of the visionary and the integrator. So the visionary is often the executive, the entrepreneur that started the company, not always, but they started the company. They're dreamers. They have lots of ideas. They have 20 ideas a week, but 19 of them will be no good, right? But that one idea might change the company's future forever. They're really good at big relationships, but they're no good at taking that big relationship right down to the tactical level. They care deeply about culture, but they've got business ADD, right? So just the idea that there is almost a DNA out there, right, of that entrepreneurial leader that's the visionary. And the challenge with the visionary, more often than not, is they're not good at keeping the trains running on time, right? And so we've introduced the concept of the integrator. So the integrator, if you were to liken that to an org chart, yeah, okay, maybe that's your president, that's your COO, but the most important thing, especially in entrepreneurially led organizations, is the visionary leader needs to acknowledge that you need to be both. If you don't have that president or COO, that CEO, that founder needs to be able to switch gears and be both. And then ideally, as soon as they have critical mass, they're hiring against that integrator position, or they're promoting someone from within. And who knows, maybe that person is sitting at the table right now that we can elevate to the integrator position. And so what this is going to do is this is going to enable your visionary to be a visionary, to be more of a business free spirit, because you want them to be, right? As long as they're not checking out of the business, which is a whole other conversation. As long as they're not checking out of the business, but they're not good at holding people accountable, providing mentorship, leadership, management capability, then let's get that integrator in. And again, that VI combo, there's another book out there, it's called Rocket Fuel, that talks about the visionary integrator combo. And if you have the right visionary integrator combination within an organization, that is rocket fuel. So that is the sort of high level of the accountability chart. Now, I've explained GWC, so gets it, wants it, capability or capacity to do it. And this is just an example here, hockey analogy, hockey metaphor, right? So we've got one of our major functions is a centerman, and the roles / responsibilities of that centerman are, and we're going to limit you to 5, right? Because less is more. So we want them to win faceoffs. We want them to create scoring chances, score goals, back check and defend, and minimize turnovers. And so, you would argue, if you're a hockey coach or if you played, that type of centerman does not exist. Usually they're good at a couple of things, not all of them. But this is, so take it with a grain of salt from that perspective. But that's what the picture I'm trying to paint here. It's like, you want to identify the things that this particular function has accountability for, that they have responsibility for. All right, so we'll just move on from here. So we're going to complete the picture on the people analyzer. So now we're measuring our people based on core value fit. And we've also got a measurement on, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? Now, Maria, as you see at the top, she is a fantastic, perfect scenario, right? John, you know, we've got someone there that culturally is a poor fit, but they do get it. They do want it. Capacity, we've got to know there. The reality is I'd move on John quicker than perhaps I would move on George, because culturally there's a misalignment. When I say move, you know, it's like if we're a for-profit industry, you know, we do need to make hard decisions sometimes and move on from people, right? So, so if someone's a poor cultural fit, then you give them less rope, if you will. And if someone's a good cultural fit or a decent cultural fit, then you give them a little bit more rope and you try and correct those no's. But ideal scenario, they fit on core values, they fit on GWC. So two kinds of people issues, right person, wrong seat. So that's the person that lives and breathes your core values, but they're just not executing. That's a scenario where you invest a bit of time and effort with the person, but you know, move on when you need to move on. And then wrong person, right seat is the person that is culturally misaligned, but damn it, they can execute. And I live that all the time as a sales leader. I'd have these sales execs that they were poor company players. They would badmouth the company the first chance they got behind closed doors. They wouldn't share leads. They wouldn't share their best practices with some of the sales reps that were struggling. And I would always hesitate to move on from that particular resource. But the reality is you do need to move on from that resource, move on quicker than the first scenario because they're killing you in the back room. Guaranteed. And people will come into your office, close the door and say, I can't believe it took you so long, even though you're all afraid about making this decision. So those are, to the extent that you're running your business, right people, right seats, that's 100% strong. Now you're probably looking at a watch here saying, how's he going to get through the next 4 components? Vision and people, I spend a decent amount of time on. I'm gonna blast through the other 4 components here for you. So data, that's just all about running your business on a scorecard. So removing ego from the equation and having some empirical things that you track on a regular basis. And what we do with scorecarding is we adopt the less is more principle. Even though this looks like a busy slide, the reality is we've got 3 or 4 executives here, Anne, Robert, David, Claire, and John. So we've got 5. And each one of these people only has a couple of numbers. Robert's got 4 numbers, but some of these people only have one number. And so what we want to do is we want to identify for those functions, what's your panic number, right? So on a weekly basis, think of the oil light on your car, right? When the oil light goes off on the dashboard, you are pulling over or you're going right to the garage. You're not stopping to pass go, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify what the critical numbers are for the organization, and we're going to track them on a weekly basis. Anything that's off track, we talk about. Here's some examples of some scorecard numbers. Every business is a little bit different, and usually takes a while for organizations to be really, really comfortable with their scorecard. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's a year. But we just want to get this sort of scorecarding happening at the senior leadership team level, and then ultimately getting it cascade throughout the organization so everyone has a number or 2 that they're tracking. So scorecard with measurables, that is 100% strong. I'll talk about how that works in the level 10 meeting. The next key component is the issues component, and all that we're doing with the issues component is we're just being really methodical about tracking anything short-term that's tripping us up, anything long-term that's tripping us up. The long-term stuff I showed you on the VTO. The short-term stuff you talk about on a weekly basis and you try and get through them, right? And so we have this problem-solving methodology that we call IDS, identify, discuss, and solve. And so what we do is we identify what the real issue is. More often than not, when you're looking at an issue, that is more of a symptom. You want to identify what the root cause of that particular issue is. So that is the identify component. Discuss is once you've identified the root, You want to discuss what needs to happen in order to make the situation better or go away completely. And then you want to solve. You want to create a to-do or an action for that particular issue. Again, I'm giving you a flyby on this methodology, but the key here is you're tracking your issues and you're using the language, right? So at the leadership team level, I know I'm succeeding with a company when I hear the CEO say to her VP of sales that, you know, this is an issue. Let's make that an issue for our next L10. Now I know they're talking the language, right? And the other thing is all your short-term issues, this is actually a small example, 7 issues, but more often than not, an organization will have 12 to 20, right? Everyone's got issues. Even high-performing, high-functioning organizations have issues. The key is you want to prioritize them, right? You can't solve at the top and move down. You got to prioritize and solve these issues in terms of what's number 1, what's number 2, and what's number 3. So that is the IDS component. And to the extent that you're running your organization methodically that way and solving issues, that's 100% strong. Process is just about documenting your core processes, making sure that you document, first of all, at a high level, what your core processes are. So there's always going to be an HR or people process. Usually there's a couple of marketing processes or a marketing and sales process, a couple of ops processes. Every business is a little bit different. And I go back and forth between process and process. By the way, I did so much business in the US, I forget which pronunciation is the Canadian one. But you know, the key is you have, and it's not an SOP manual, right? So an SOP manual gets into the minutia. This is documenting the 20% of the work that gets 80% of the work done, right? And making sure that everyone follows these core processes. So to the extent that you're doing that within the organization, that is 100% strong. And you want to make sure that these processes are followed. Now, I want to spend a little bit more time on traction because this is what attracted me to the system. Now, I'm an execution person. I have a sales background. You know, so I have an affinity for this, but you know, there's a lot of key components, like they're all equal, right? Now on the traction component, it's about setting 90-day goals, creating focus with the leadership team on what's important for the next 60 to 90 days at the company level, and then also at the individual functional level, and then running great meetings, right? And so the level 10 meeting, first of all, you want to create a mentality at the senior leadership team level, the visionary included, that you don't mess with the L10. The L10 is quasi-religious. It's 90 minutes that we get together every week. You don't book customer calls. There's really only 2 reasons that you would miss the level 10 meeting: death, your own, or vacation, right? So you want to create this mentality. And again, even with the visionary, because the visionary is going to hate the meeting, guaranteed, but they need to be there. It's 90 minutes. We need you there, right? So it's always the same day. It's always the same time. It's going to start on time. It's going to end on time. It's going to have the same agenda. And here's the agenda. So what we'll do with the level 10 meeting, we usually run the level 10 meeting in a SaaS application up on a big screen, even though everyone might be in the room. Or, you know, we work in hybrid environments now where some people are in the room, some people aren't. But basically, we're going to spend 5 minutes on good news. That's where everyone sort of checks in. There's a psychological element to that where you want a bit of an icebreaker, right? People shifting gears. They spend 5 minutes on the scorecard, and anytime a number is off track, you just drop it down. You don't talk about why it's off track. You just drop it down. You spend 5 minutes on your rocks, and any rock that is off track, you drop it down to your issues list. If a rock is complete, we note that. If a rock is on schedule or still in process of being completed for the quarter, we just note that as well. And then we spend 5 minutes on customer and employee headlines. So these are the things that need to be shared. Like we just signed Coca-Cola and they're really happy with us. And Pepsi is not happy with us right now. And Sally in accounting is going on mat leave. And Jim got into an accident in the yard. So all of that stuff, right? That's where you share that, but no more than 5 minutes. So you got to come to the meeting prepared to share your headlines. And if it's a bad headline, like Pepsi's not happy with us or someone got hurt in the yard, That's going to be an issue. You can drop that down to the issues list. Then you're going to spend 5 minutes recapping your to-dos. So everything that you all agreed that you were going to do last week in your level 10 meeting, you want to be aiming for 80 to 90% to-do completion. That's 5 minutes. And by the way, if you're constantly at 30, 40, 50%, there's one of two things happening. There's either an accountability issue, and this is what the system will filter for you. It'll drive that forward. If there are accountability issues, they'll be plain as day. Or you're creating to-dos that are way too broad. Like, it's what can you accomplish in the next week to make this situation better or go away completely. And then you spend most of your time in the level 10 solving problems, IDSing, as I described earlier. At the end of the meeting, we talk about any messages that need to get out to the teams. We recap to-dos, and everyone rates the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10. And this is where it becomes a dynamic self-correcting mechanism where we run a meeting and we've got a number of 5s or 6s or 7s. As long as you give a reason to the person running the meeting, which is most of the time the integrator, per the accountability chart discussion, you know, you're going to get better and better and better. And so what I've worked with 35 companies now. Generally speaking, what I do is I'll go online and check their meeting scores. Coming out of the gates, they're always going to be 4s and 5s and 6s because they've got high expectations, but they will gradually get better and better and better. That's a level 10 meeting. And to the extent that you're running your business with cadence, that you're solving your issues, that you're religious in terms of getting together as a team to discuss these things, that's 100% strong. So those are the 6 key components of EOS. And what I will do is I'm just going to walk you through quickly how it gets implemented within a company. And then we'll have a decent amount of time, Craig, maybe 10 minutes for Q&A. So, and by the way, I've been presenting this to you kind of as the kind of the way I might present it to the Ottawa Executives Association, mostly CEO level business owners, entrepreneurs. But I want to recognize that you are all, you know, CMC and there's a management consultant component. So I just want to make a couple of quick comments here. First of all, know that being an EOS implementer is something that you can do. We have an abundance mindset as implementers. There's 600 of us worldwide. You know, there is a franchise fee and some training and stuff like that, but the community is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's so many organizations out there on the planet that could use this system. We feel that the market is huge. So just know that that could be a potential for you. And then the other thing is when you're working with your clients, if you see some dysfunction that might be addressed with this system, just give the client traction or tell them about traction. Right. And that's just a couple of things that I wanted to mention to you. Now, if I get called in, here's how it works. When I say I as an EOS implementer, here's how EOS gets implemented. So first thing that we do is that we do the 90-minute meeting. The 90-minute meeting is kind of similar to what I'm doing here. And essentially, I'm socializing the system to the leadership team. And there's 3 objectives, right? Number 1, does the leadership team feel that EOS can help them? Number 2, do they feel that Scott Morin can help them? Because there's other implementers out there, right? And then number 3, I don't know what's happening with my slide here. I'm just manually changing it back whenever it moves forward. Sorry, gang. And number 3 is, do I feel like I can help this client? Because sometimes I'll get into a 90-minute meeting and I'll see some things where it's like, yeah, I can't help these folks, right? Or it's usually when the CEO has their arms crossed and they're like, you know, they're being told that EOS is a fit for them, but they're not buying it. They're not interested. They're checking their phone. I'm probably not going to be able to help, right? So those are the 3 objectives of the 90-minute meeting. Now, if the organization moves forward and brings someone like myself in, we spend the first day of 90 days across 60 to 90 days. We'd spend the first day doing tactical stuff. So we'll build the accountability chart. We'll write rocks. I will facilitate 90-day goals for these folks. I will teach them the level 10 meeting. And there's a high amount of repetition and writing that goes into that. And then we'll develop their scorecard. So that happens in the first day. The first day is always the longest. The accountability chart exercise is always the longest. It never fails. Even organizations that I work with that have everything settled from an org chart perspective, everyone seems to be quite clear. There's always lots of discussion on swim lanes, roles, responsibilities, you name it, right? And it's all healthy stuff. You want to have that dialogue. So then we take about a 30-day break, not from the business. So that company is going to go back and they're going to start doing, their day-to-day. They're going to start running L10s. And then we get back together because there is a spaced learning component here where we get back together 30 days later. And then we just check in. We check in on all the work that we did in the focus day. And then we're going to start facilitating things like core values and core focus and core target, all that type of stuff. So usually we get to marketing strategy and vision building day 1. And then in vision building day 2, we complete the vision traction organizer with 3-year picture, 1-year plan. And the rocks that we wrote in the focus day are now due. So there's an element of accountability that is brought home from a leadership team perspective. Generally speaking, we're sitting at 30 to 50% rock completion for first timers, normal. They get better at it. But that's kind of what the process looks like. It's 3 days over 60 to 90 days. And then we get into a quarterly rhythm. Organizations get together once a quarter to go over the quarter that was and write rocks for the next quarter. And I will teach them some new EOS tools as well when we get together. So, generally speaking, companies, I have one company, I've been doing this for 4 years now. So I have one company that's been with me for all 4 years. They bring me in every quarter. They love having me in, sort of asking dumb questions and being Columbo. I have other organizations that are very, either autonomous or they're looking to conserve their cash, where they might have me around for a year to 2 years. And maybe even some organizations can graduate before then. But that's what the process looks like. And each one of these days, by the way, is there's no contract required. We just come in, we deliver it, and then at the end of the day, we'll invoice the client. And if they weren't happy with the day, that our guarantee is you don't have to pay the invoice, right? And we have that guarantee because we are confident we will add value. And I've yet to have someone not pay their invoice, but that's the kind of the way it works. And it helps entrepreneurs deal with this in terms of, okay, well, if I don't like it after the focus day, I haven't signed like this year-long contract with Scott. No, you haven't, right? So that's the process. Just some final thoughts. The organizational checkup, it's available online. Go to eosworldwide.com. Take the checkup, consider a system. And then I love this quote here: systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exceptional. And this quote is for the visionaries, right? So there's some visionaries, many visionaries that are hesitant for reasons that they don't want to lose their soul. They feel that there's an element of prescription with the system. And even though at face value that may be the case, because I'm going to ask you to run L10s, I'm going to ask you to set 90-day goals, I'm going to ask you to have a balanced scorecard. The reality is what we're going to do is we're going to free you up to be yourselves. So systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exceptional. So with that, Craig, my flyby is over. 6 minutes.
Scott.
Q&A.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And just to point out to everyone, this is I love this methodology because there's lots of amazing management methodologies and business planning methodologies, and this one keeps it simple, but it puts in those little steps that I think help connect that vision. And I love the visionary, the integrator distinction, and then it connects it down to the elements of the business, the domains of the business, in a very simple, accountable way. So you got implemented as a EOS certified person, and people can go on the web and check that out. And you and I were also talking about, there are some companies who you've met with and then went out and decided to read the book on their own, and other consultants may just want to, read the book or the one that you've recommended or some of the other books on this, and kind of incorporate some of these elements into their own, I guess, management consulting, business planning, right, with their own companies or clients.
Yeah, there's no rocket science. It's all logical stuff. There's an element of intellectual property that, like, you just got to be careful there with the mothership. But a lot of these components, like Gino Wickman is very upfront about, there's Jim Collins stuff in here. There's Vern Harnish stuff in here. Like it's all logical. It all makes sense, right? There's 3 books that I recommend, and you'll have to forgive me, Craig. So there is an entire library, an entire EOS library. I think we're up to 7 books now. Traction's the Bible. The one I recommend for visionaries and integrators is Rocket Fuel.
Yep.
That is a great book. And then if the client is curious as to what an implementation might look like, there's a book called Get a Grip.
Yeah.
Which is a business fable that details a company going through an implementation and some of the stuff that happens.
Thank you. So I've got a stack of questions. One submitted from Callistus is concerning the role technology plays in the current business landscape, right? By design, technology is not represented in the model, or is it embedded in any of the model components?
Yeah, so if I understand the question correctly, and if I haven't, let me know. So there is a technology component. There's actually, let me approach this from 2 different ways. So there is a tech component. We have SaaS. We have a number of software applications that are that will do all. You can run your level 10s up in the cloud. You can have all your scorecarding there. You can have all your rocks there. You can bring it down to your phone. You create issues on the fly. So there's technology that will support an EOS implementation. So let me point that out. But if the question has to do with technology and the dynamic nature of that type of business, like pivot, because I live that, right? Being a startup background, pivot. The reality is there's elements of strategy that EOS won't touch, right? And so you're still going to have to get together and do some of that sort of pivot strategy work. But the way we would look at that is we would say, okay, let's just make that an issue. Like, and then as we IDS that, the action coming out of that is we're going to do a 2-day offsite to talk about this new technology, that's the AI that's just popped up, and how we need to address that within our value prop. I don't know if I've answered it properly.
Yeah, it's an open-ended question from my interpretation as well. I mean, obviously the IT group is within the operations portion of the simple organization breakdown, and today technology seems to impact everything. Are there some tools out there that can help with implementing EOS?
Yeah, so the one I recommend is a tool called 90.io. You can Google that. There's another company out there called Bloom Growth that has a tool. It used to be called Traction Tools. And then EOS itself, the mothership, is coming out with its own SaaS solution for clients, but it's still in beta. And I'm a former software guy, and I wouldn't ask anyone to run their business on beta software. So,
are there some other methodologies that work with EOS?
Yeah, like what I would say is for EOS, make that the methodology for running your business day to day at the senior leadership team level. But then you're going to have, from a development perspective, you're going to have development methodologies. From a sales perspective, you're going to have sales methodologies. Like I used to run Miller Hyman or Sandler, those types of things. So they would all interoperate from that perspective. But just make sure your leadership team cadence runs on EOS. And then you can plug in some of these other methodologies as required.
One of the things that I love about the methodology is the rock part, okay? Because I'm into rock and roll, and I'm into, I think, having, you know, sensational moments within meetings, and it inspires people. So just talk a little bit about getting, you know, what are these rocks? Give me a couple of ideas of,
yeah,
you know, what rocks people.
Yeah, and rocks create focus.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you don't call out these 2 or 3 things at the beginning of every quarter as things that need to be done, there's a chance that your day-to-day is just going to completely take over the reactive nature of your business, and then you'll be looking at your business 90 days from now, and those really important things aren't done, right? And so first bit of magic here is we just get consensus and alignment at the leadership team level on what's important for the company, and then what's important at the individual functional level. Then we get a feedback loop going on what type of goal would you write? Like the rock could be as simple as, an example of a rock might be, by the end of March, we will have shortlisted 3 VP of sales candidates. It's an example of a rock, right? Or the rock could be even more binary than that. By the end of March, we'll have a new VP of sales in place. You know, another example of a rock, going back to my tech days, you know, our errors per line of code will be at a certain percentage by the end of the quarter, right? And so what you're doing is you're calling that thing out, and you're going to have a weekly drumbeat on it in your level 10s. And anytime one of these things are off track, what that means is it's an issue, and everyone's aware that this thing's off track, and you're going to do everything you can to get back on track. So that's the magic. It's all about focus.
Right. I love it. We're going to put 6 companies on the cloud in the next 60 days.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. By the way, anybody has any more questions, put them in the chat. I will talk to Scott later on about answers to those questions. I'll put them in a blog on CMC Canada, and this show is being recorded and will be available on YouTube channel for CMC Canada. Thank you, Scott Morin from Bytown Ventures, for being with us today. Fantastic methodology. I want to also thank CMC Ontario events coordinator Sandra Addison Brock. Next month, June, our host guest will be Jennifer Smith with Dale Booth. They'll be discussing how to effectively partner with Indigenous firms. I'll be back September 13th with Sam Effa talking about sports, business, and anything else that goes into that community, and ways in which we can interact and use both to move forward together in this world. So on behalf of CMC Ontario and CMC Canada, this is Craig Mackay, host of What's Up Wednesday. Thank you all for being here. Remember, live and believe in your core values in business and life. Enjoy the summer and get together with your family and friends. Cheers. Thanks, Scott.